You could say I'm a Roy Orbison fan. I'm a very big Roy Orbison fan. These glasses aren't real. These were given to me and everybody who went to the Roy Orbison concert in Chicago, June 6th, 1988, at the Consumer Electronics Show. This was a concert, you can see the Playboy logo on there maybe. So this was a concert that Playboy sponsored at the same time the Consumer Electronics Show was in Chicago. I saved the ticket. This was in the Drake Ballroom, in the Hotel Drake Ballroom. And so when we heard that Roy Orbison was going to be there, my friend Frank and I went, "Are you kidding?" This, because we had to be at the Consumer Electronics Show anyway. We're going. And we went. And the hall was mostly empty. Not too many people showed up to see Roy Orbison. Because the truth of the matter is, by around that time, Roy's popularity had waned for a number of reasons. But that was a memorable night because so few people were there. We got to walk in front of the monitors between the speakers that were blaring into the room and the stage where Roy was singing. So we got to hear Roy Orbison singing unamplified into the microphone. And let me tell you something. The magic was in Roy's voice, not in what was done once it got to the microphone. Unforgettable. I saw Roy 2 other times after that. Once was at Jones Beach, and that was a good show. But the best show was the next one at the Beacon Theater. Sold out crowd at the Beacon Theater. And for the encore, Roy did Crying. And he got to that last big note, and everybody's wondering, is he going to really be able to, at this point in his life, in 1980, whatever it was, is he going to be able to hit that note? And he hit it. And when he hit it, the sound pressurized the room. And it became like that note became this giant bubble of Roy that filled the room. And when he was finished, the audience leapt up and started, people were crying and screaming and applauding. It was amazing. Moments that I will never forget. So let's talk about the Roy Orbison M-G-M box. But first, a little bit of history. Through records, because records are your best entertainment value. So this was Roy, started out at Sun Records. This was a Charlie compilation that has everything he did on Sun Records back in the 50s for Sam Phillips. And then I wanted to go forward to this album here. This is the very best of Roy Orbison. And this is the first Roy Orbison album that I ever bought. And the reason it took me that long is because back in those days, when someone like Roy Orbison had a hit single, there was an album with a hit single on it and a lot of filler. Now, I didn't know. Maybe the Roy albums had great songs on it, but I wasn't too optimistic because I never heard of Monument Records. It was a small label. And then I was concerned about even buying this record because it said stereo. But in those days, a lot of records that said stereo were really electronically reprocessed. And who knew how good the sound was going to be on this? And I was going to buy a record, and if it was electronically reprocessed, it would be terrible. And even in those days, I knew the difference. So I brought it home and I played it, and it was like, the sound on this record is spectacular. It is astonishing. It's real stereo. It's three-dimensional. The production is genius. Now, the producer is credited as Fred Foster, but the real genius behind these Monument records was the great late engineer Bill Porter. And I was lucky enough in my life later on to get to sit with Bill Porter and interview him. You can read the interview on analogplanet.com. And do a listening session with Bill Porter on a really nice stereo in Nashville. And he would talk about the production of all the various songs. It was a magical moment. And Bill's passed away. But I also did get a chance in 1988 to give him a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Absolute Sound magazine where I was working at the time, because the editor was a big Bill Porter fan and a big Roy fan, and it was great. And I became friends with Bill after that, and he passed away. So Actually, this record is a nasty record, as it turns out, and this is something I didn't really realize till I read the annotation by Alex Orbison, the wonderful annotation that comes in this box set, the M-G-M Years. So here is the booklet that comes with it, and here's the slipcase, very nicely done slipcase, and here's the back of it, and then here are the records, 13 records. You know, Roy Orbison sang a lot of songs filled with sadness about crying and losing someone you love, and even the songs that were set in a tropical island. The guy went down diving and got his foot caught and died underwater. Lots of negative things, but nothing in the songs compares to the tragedies in Roy's life, because his wife Claudette died in a motorcycle accident during the M-G-M years, and 2 of his sons died in a fire during this time. So, he had a very, very tough life, but he persevered. The M-G-M years, among many Roy devotees, were considered less good than the Monument years because there were not a lot of hit singles. Overseas, he did better than in America. But another thing happened to Roy that kind of tamped down his career, which was the Beatles and the change in musical tastes. But Roy never changed his musical tastes. He had an idea of what he wanted to do, and he continued doing what he wanted to do. And so the M-G-M years resulted in records that perhaps were not as rock-oriented. He was going for an older audience, not as focused in some ways, and so many people, myself included, I have all these records. These are all the originals that I'm gonna show you. So this is not from the box. This is the original first record he did for M-G-M. Here's the second, Orbison Way. Here's the third, and then he did Roy Orbison Sings Don Gibson. And the reason he did this was the contract he signed with M-G-M was really brutal. He had to put out so many songs, right? And he wrote so many songs. The idea that Roy's career kind of fell off because he wasn't writing songs and because of what happened to him and his family is ridiculous. He wrote so many songs. This was done because he was working on a movie, and he couldn't write new songs and do the movie at the same time. So this was the movie. Roy wanted to be a movie star. I guess maybe he saw Elvis. He didn't really have Elvis's movie star appeal, but he made this movie. The story behind this movie is pretty amazing. It's in the annotation. So here's an interesting thing. This is Cry Softly Lonely One. There's a song on here called Communication Breakdown. And yes, this came first, obviously. And Jimmy Page liked the name of the song. They were touring together. And of course, Roy toured with the Beatles. He had an amazing life. So I'm not going to go song by song here. I'm just going to tell you that there are some really interesting albums on here that are hard to find. This is a double record set of B-sides and singles that are compiled here, and that's interesting. And then there was this record that he did in the UK for Decca, which was Roy Orbison accompanied by the art movement. So he did kind of get involved in more modern kind of sounds, but really he stayed true to his belief system about the music he wanted to make. So these albums, in retrospect, listening back to them, were much better than some people thought when they originally came out. The problem was M-G-M was not really a great promoter of pop and rock at the time. You remember they had the Boston Sound, Ultimate Spinach, and other bands. They didn't make a go with that, and they had trouble promoting Roy also. That's why it's so nice now to have all of these M-G-M records in one place where fans can pick up the box and enjoy Roy Orbison and see it in a different light over time, now that we can look back at it. In fact, I went back and listened to these records, and I had kind of put them aside. I listened to the Monument stuff, honestly, more. But now I appreciate these really more. And part of the reason is the sound on this box. Now, it was done digitally, but for a good reason. They went back to the original 3-track tapes And they remastered everything at 192 24-bit. And in all honesty, you know, Bill Porter was a genius, and those monuments were spectacular sounding, but the original mixes of the MGMs there were certain issues where they were 3-track tapes mostly. The left, center, right was kind of separated out. The EQ was kind of hokey. They went back and they remixed it and re-EQ'd it and did it at 192 24-bit. There are some ways that the originals sound better in terms of space, because I think digital, if anybody thinks digital is completely transparent, they're wrong. It's not. There's a thing that happens. It's like instead of it going on and on, it has this stop point. But that's the negative side. The positive side is that the mixes are better. The EQ is much, much better. And overall, and the vinyl's better, that's for sure, because MGM wasn't exactly pressing the best records. In retrospect, this box is overall better than the original pressings, I think. Plus, there are some things that are hard to find that are on the box. So, after the MGM years, Roy's career kind of fell off. He sort of disappeared. And he was still doing concerts and still had a following and was more popular overseas, I think, than in America. Then in 1985, he went back to Sam Phillips and recorded this album with Johnny Cash and Jerry Lee Lewis and Carl Perkins, class of '55. It's recorded and mixed digitally, which is too bad, but it's still, you know, they got back together. Then in 1988, his career took off, and he signed with Virgin Records and put out this record, his first record in 10 years. And this has a production by Jeff Lynne and T-Bone Burnett, and it's got just wonderful songs on it. And Bono produced the song. It's got the Comedians, the Elvis Costello song. Really wonderful record. Everybody who was a Roy fan was so happy to see him back. But then came, I think, what is really the pinnacle, well, one pinnacle, which was this, which was Roy Orbison and Friends, A Black and White Night. And hopefully every Roy Orbison fan has seen the video. It's a wonderful concert, and he's backed by Springsteen and Tom Waits and T-Bone Burnett, and the background singers are Jennifer Warnes and Bonnie Raitt and Elvis Costello. It's a magical concert, and it came out on vinyl. Now the credits say there was a tape operator. Now maybe it was a Mitsubishi X80, in which case it's a digital recording, but if this was done to analog tape, this should be reissued. I don't know what we're waiting for. This is a wonderful sounding record on a single record produced in 1988 or 9, whenever it came out. So let's do that one again. And then, of course, he joined the Traveling Wilburys, and with Dylan and Tom Petty and Jeff Lynne. What a great, this was just, everybody that was a Roy fan was just so happy to see him really among his peers. Really, everybody loved these records, and rightfully so. They're wonderful records. So it was a happy time for Roy. And then even the MGM years, Rhino got the rights and put out this record. And liner notes by a guy named Jim Fahey. They're wonderful notes because they explain how good these songs were during the MGM years and how they were neglected and overlooked by some parts of the audience, including Roy's fans. And this makes this a very good case for it. But a better case, of course, is now there's this new box set, which is fantastic. And then, just as Roy was beginning to enjoy another round of success, he dies at a very young age, in his 50s. It's so sad. And his wife, Barbara, who he married and who really helped push his career forward, she died 23 years later on the same day that he died. So, Roy Orbison had an amazing life. He was a singular talent with an amazing voice that to this day, there's nothing like it. And this new box set does it justice and really resurrects the MGM years so that people who don't know about these records, and even people who do but kind of didn't pay that much attention to them, can now go back and enjoy again Roy Orbison on vinyl the way it's meant to be heard. So this is a terrific box, and I'll be writing about it too, but I thought you might want to see it and have me talk about it. So thanks for listening.